Hello, everyone. So today is the first day of this podcast. So, for any of you who are wondering, yes, this is a new podcast I'm starting. I'm a little bit late to the party. I know. I said I was going to start at 7 p.m. EST. It's currently 7:13 EST, and we had ran into some technical difficulties, but we should be a-okay for now. So, this video is sort of more going to be an introduction set to my podcast. I know that this is a live stream, of course, and all, but should be there. So anyway, welcome to Goo's Goated Podcast. On this episode, we're mainly going to be talking about myself and a few things that happened to start off the new year. So let's begin. I'm just going to be covering most of myself on my blog site right here. So Goo's 2026 blog. So as of January 1st, 2026, I am back from my road trip. A little bit about myself. So, one, I'm a little bit under the weather, so if my voice sounds a little bit funny in this episode, I'm sorry. That's just how it is. But anyway, with that being said, let's introduce myself. So, my name is Andrew Goo. I'm currently a junior at Kettering University. At the time of me recording this, I currently live in the Detroit area. I'm not going to say exactly where, but anyway, I am a guy who likes driving a lot. As you can tell from this list right here, during my trip out for the holidays, I drove to Springfield, Illinois, Oklahoma City, Dallas, Texas, Little Rock, Arkansas, Rayville, Louisiana, Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, Alabama, and finally Louisville, Kentucky. So anyway, one thing about this road trip that has sort of made me feel a little bit interesting about all this stuff that's happened is I have been sort of in an odd state in my life. Currently I am not doing an internship program anywhere, or I'm not currently, at least not officially employed anywhere. But besides that, my dad passed away back in October. You may have seen the video about that. He always wanted to travel the country, but unfortunately he got ill about 6 years before he passed, so unfortunately that never got around. But anyway, this year has gone off to a wild start. As with any year, a lot of really crazy stuff happened. So we'll get into that a bit later. Right now, my goal for 2026 is to get down to 180 pounds. I'm currently around like 220, 217-ish. Read through the entire King James Version Bible from start to finish. Get to about 200 pounds on bench press, which I really need to catch up on. And get to 1700 ELO on chess.com for rapid mode. I feel like these are some reasonable goals for this year. I know that it's already been a week in since. But anyway, to cover the rest of my blog, or really this is just more of an introduction to myself, I would like to list a few of my current interests as of right now. So, I am currently majoring as a computer science student at Kettering University with a concentration in AI. I personally believe AI is going to widely shape what we're going to be seeing in the future. Currently, as of right now, I attend Prayer Baptist Church in Westland, Michigan. I started attending there in 2021 after a little bit of a disagreement between where I was previously. I'm not going to get into that, as that's an episode for another time. So here's a few things I want to disclose about my podcast, and it's the same as my blog. No bullshit, all right? I'm not someone who likes telling my friends, I don't like being a faker, all right? I like being pretty objective about my opinions. They are biased, as I will admit. I am a little bit I do lean towards the right on a lot of stuff. Uh, that's something I'm not really going to attempt to hide or, try to pretend that I'm not that. All right. It is this is the United States. I get to say what I want. All right. Within reason. Uh, I expect daily updates now. For this podcast, I expect to do an episode every Wednesday at 7 o'clock EST. That may be subject to change in the future, but that's the current schedule for now. And just like my blog, feel free to cite my podcast, but you must credit me as the original source. But anyway, with that being said, we have about 42 minutes left. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk for the rest of the 42 minutes, but I will try my best. As you can tell, the biggest news of the beginning of the year, January 3rd, 2026. It seems like January 3rd's always been a big year for stuff. I don't know. But January 3rd, 2020, exactly 6 years ago from the time this happened, was when Donald Trump had taken out Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, Iraq. I personally am a huge fan of him doing that because a lot of people will say, "Oh, the strike was illegal. Oh, you shouldn't have done that." Let me just break it to you. Soleimani was not a good man. He killed a lot of our service members here in the United States. He's responsible for multiple wars and overall a very, very troubling figure in Iran. Now, I'm no geopolitical expert, but I just like paying attention to this stuff because I like to keep up with things. Excuse me. But anyway, what's probably crazy about what happened is that outside of Soleimani being killed in 2020, which was 6 years ago, we also apparently captured, in sort of like a Call of Duty style sort of deal, we captured Nicolas Maduro and his wife. I mean, bro, we went in, all right, we struck Caracas, or Caracas, I don't know, whatever the capital of Venezuela is, however you pronounce it, we struck them. We kidnapped their leader, their dictator, and often considered to be illegitimate dictator of a leader, and his wife, and we kidnapped him. I think it's a pretty badass move for the U.S. military to take, considering that he has been threatening us for quite some time now. Now listen, this is a huge event, has a lot of implications. We're going to get into all of that right now. But first off, I just want to make a few disclaimers. Number one, I am not someone who completely agrees with the fact that, international law is like the number one thing. No. All right. I do agree that, countries should work within certain things. They should work within certain lines. I agree with that. But at the same time, my bad. At the same time, we have problems. Those problems being is who the hell are going to enforce these laws? Because last I checked, international police is not exactly a thing. At least not in the way we think it is. But with that being said, was this technically against international law? Yes. Are the people of Venezuela unhappy about that? No, they really don't give a shit. And I'll tell you why. Mainly, for one, these Venezuelan people are tired of living underneath a communistic dictatorship by Maduro himself. So, with that being said, him being captured is something that they are happy about. Now, I want to make a few things clear. So, Hugo Chavez was the guy who came before Nicolas Maduro, and he was a communist himself, and then Maduro overtook him once he passed away due to cancer. And, Venezuela used to be one of the richer countries. Their GDP was good, their economy was good. They were comparable to even some European countries, for example. But after this communist regime had began, quality of life in Venezuela had dropped very sharply. Now, I don't know the exact details on everything. I'm no geopolitical expert, as I mentioned earlier, but one thing for sure is that Venezuelans were not happy with Maduro's rule. He was widely unpopular before he was captured, and the thing about that is a lot of people say, "Oh, Donald Trump's a fascist Nazi or whatever," or you know, Donald Trump's going to be a dictator and all that. Which will say that that's a possibility, but as of right now, I don't see that happening. Maduro was an actual dictator, however. And what's crazy to me is that the people who say Trump's a dictator are not saying Maduro is a dictator. At least a lot of the people I've seen have completely dismissed those claims, which I think is a little bit ridiculous. But besides that, there's there's no reason to be supporting this guy. I mean, he imprisons his own people, right? Like most regimes do. He's responsible for drug trafficking into the country, right? That's what he's being charged for. And to top it all off, I mean, he's been working with other countries that absolutely hate us, like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, you name it. They just don't like us. But even if they did like us, it doesn't excuse anything that's happened within the past couple of years. So I'm glad that he got captured. And I can't believe we started off the year, first week, and we're already kidnapping foreign officials, which, I mean, yeah, sounds bad until you realize what this guy has really been up to. And I'm not going to lie, the image of him dressing up in front of the camera, so if I can quickly pull up, if I can quickly pull it up, let me find it. I can quickly pull it up. Yeah, so this kind of looks like freaking a combination of like maybe Saddam Hussein and Dr. Disrespect. I mean, it's a pretty funny image of what he looks like. I mean, one day he was threatening us, and now he's in our goddamn custody, which I think is pretty funny. But anyway, enough said about that. I just think that this is a very, very wild event to start off the year. I will definitely be keeping tabs on the situation for the future. But that's enough said about Venezuela. Now, a little bit more about myself. I'm currently a Baptist, Prayer Baptist Church in Westland. I have my beliefs there. And one thing for sure is that, as this podcast goes on, we will be discussing more topics because this is an ever changing world at a very rapid pace. So let's talk about something else. Now, this is not written in my blog, and you could probably ignore the text that's on your screen right now, but I digress. So we can talk about Iran, for example. Right now, there are mass protests in Tehran. So, I mean, if you just simply go on here, just simply Googling Iranian protests, for example, I mean, look at this. I mean, there's so many articles about this. This was updated literally an hour ago. I mean, we're live right now as we speak. We are live. And, it's crazy to me that Iran is even trying to cutting off the internet for all this. So, let me just give me 1 second. Oops, my bad. It's just crazy to me how as what's even worse about all of this that's been going on recently. This is very similar to what happened in Afghanistan not too long ago, where we are seeing people protesting about. We're seeing people protesting, and then the government shuts down the internet. Now, if you don't know, this was actually covered by, shout out to Some Ordinary Gamers, or otherwise known as Mudahar. Afghanistan, when they shut off their internet by, the Taliban being a bunch of crazed Islamic jihadi, whatever you want to call them, uh, and I'm not saying everyone who follows Islam is crazy. I'm not saying everyone who follows the principles of Islam are crazy. There's good people in every religion. I fully believe that. But the Taliban is not an example of that. The Taliban is an extremely radicalized, and they always say, USO, in US women are oppressed. Try Afghanistan, man. I mean, you can't even do anything without your husband's permission if you live in Afghanistan as a woman. But aside from that, in the wake of this whole Maduro situation, I mean, that is one less thing that the Ayatollahs have. The Ayatollahs of Iran. You might think that, Venezuela and Iran, they're so far away. How does all this stuff work together? But geopolitically, they are aligned against us. And I might get into some trouble talking about this. But I think it's important anyway. We are seeing protests. And again, these are only from a few days ago. They've been rioting for so long. And the funny thing about all of this is that Iran is known for shutting down these protests. Iran is known for causing trouble like this. Like causing protests like this. And the government tries to crack down on them. Now, I don't have to explain why that's a huge issue. I mean, if you look at the Islamic Republic, there's no water left in Iran, from what I've been told. All right, there's very little water. The IRGC has been using it for their, nuclear missile testing and ballistic missile programs and whatever they spend their resources on, and nobody can get water in this country. So that is part of the reason why the protests are happening. Another reason why part of these protests are happening is that we are seeing things such as Venezuela. We are seeing that the CCP, for example, is incredibly unpopular. And, more and more people are just becoming aware of what's been going on. So I would like to be inclined to see certain things about whether or not this might evolve into some sort of regime change. Now, to get back to a few things that may be of concern, everyone's very worried about the whole Iraq syndrome situation. So, if you don't know what Iraq syndrome is, basically back in 2003, when we invaded Iraq and we took down Saddam Hussein, there were a lot of concerns about the power vacuum and the eventual rise of ISIS. I don't know what's going to happen. I am not a fortune teller. I cannot tell you that, there isn't going to be some sort of power vacuum if Ayatollah Ali Khamenei gets out of power or if something else happens. But what I will say is that it is definitely possible to take action. All right, it is possible for this administration to take action without having to spend billions of dollars trying to reshape a country that is completely war torn. All right, I think it goes without saying what happened in Venezuela. I mean, as of right now, I have not heard of any attempt to keep soldiers deployed in Venezuela. I don't think that's really a thing. But in any case, so a little bit more context to the whole water situation in Iran. So what we are seeing right now is we're seeing that there's a bit of a crisis. Now, as you may know, Iran's not exactly known for having a lot of water. I mean, if you just, you search up Iran, you go to maps. I'm sorry about my voice, by the way. But if you look at Iran, it's a pretty dry country. I mean, most of it is completely desert. I mean, you got a few lush areas near Tehran, and you might have a decent amount of opportunity to grow and develop near the Persian Gulf, but Other than that, there's not really much that goes on around here. So, uh, in terms of water, I mean, there's not really a whole lot of options here. Now, one thing I will note about this is that uh, other Middle Eastern countries are suffering from this water situation as well. You got Afghanistan, you got Iraq, you got hell, even Saudi Arabia is not exactly a water-rich nation, as you may have seen earlier. But basically, what's been going on for the past 40 years is complete and utter mismanagement of the water resources here. There's a lot of complaints about Iran's water being mismanaged. As mentioned earlier, the IRGC completely ignoring what people want with the water. The farmers, especially, not getting enough. And we are seeing that there's just not enough water to go around, especially. And the thing is, people, we live in the United States. I mean, I live in freaking Michigan, all right? Michigan has some of the most fresh water imaginable. We border almost every single major Great Lake. Michigan, we are completely fine, except for maybe Flint, but I mean, even then, they got their pipes replaced. All of that's irrelevant to here. Well, not irrelevant, but just unrelated. Uh, but anyway, from what we're seeing right now, we're seeing that with Iran, there's no water, and without water, there's a lot of things that you may not realize that water is super crucial for. For example, you need clean drinking water. I think it goes without saying that with people need water to survive, and that's a huge problem. That alone is already an issue, but think about it. Farmers also need water. There's a lot of things that need water, such as running factories, running businesses. Water is part of a huge, huge reason that life can exist as it is. Without it, people are getting dehydrated. And again, think about Iran's climate. It's very hot. It's very dry. There was never a lot of water to begin with here. And what makes this more of a concerning issue for the people living in this country is that the government, for example, has been turning down for every once in a while they will shut down the water system to conserve water. And you know, Wikipedia is not the best source, I'll admit, but for the sake of this first episode, I'll just use it. Water scarcity in Iran is a huge problem. As you can see, we have uneven distribution of water. We have some of, the World Resources Institute states that Iran is one of the most water stressed countries in the whole world. And it's no surprise when you got a completely messed up government saying, "Hey, we need all this water for ballistic missile testing," which, if you recall from June of last year, June 2025, that did not go so well. The U.S. bombed multiple critical Iranian nuclear facilities. And if you're wondering, no, these facilities, these ballistic missile programs, all this stuff, aren't exactly popular among the people who live within the regime. Uh, but anyway, with all that being said, this is a huge reason why we are seeing these protests because nobody can get water in this country. Tehran is completely dried out. I heard of Mashhad, and one thing that's kind of ironic about all this is I mentioned earlier about the Taliban. The Taliban has completely shut off all of its rivers that flow from Afghanistan into Iran, and so you got two corrupt governments negotiating over who needs water. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I feel bad for these people, but at the same time, this has become a huge, huge contentious point for people that need water, and now they're protesting over it. Afghanistan already has itself doesn't have a lot of water to begin with. I mean, it's in one of the more mountainous regions, and it's very difficult for water to get to Afghanistan. But what we're seeing with these protests in Iran is A lot of it's over water. A lot of it's over economic hardship or political differences, whatever it may be. And I stand with those people. I can't imagine, like imagine if this same government was running Michigan, for example, right? We would see all the fresh water being used for programs nobody asked for. Nobody asked for ballistic missile testing in Iran. Nobody asked for any of this stuff. I mean, of course, there's going to be exceptions to that. I mean, there's going to be maybe like an incredibly small minority of people who are asking for those things. But for the most part, it's wildly unpopular. And what's more concerning about all of this is we're seeing that, and now I will say that climate change is a little bit of a controversial topic. I tend to believe that climate change is happening, but to what extent humans are involved in it, that's a completely different question. But regardless, we are seeing a rise of temperature across the world. I mean, right now for me, this morning, for example, it was 50 degrees in Michigan on January, right? In January, which is a very absurd thing to see. I mean, about 10 years ago, you would never see something like that. But all of this is tied together because we are seeing stuff like this where all the water in these lakes are drying up. We are seeing, Tehran, Isfahan, Shiraz, and Mashhad. We are seeing all of the water supplies going completely drained. I mean, look at this: 1% full in Tehran, frequently dry, 54% full, dead storage, and 5% full. These are some of the biggest dams in the country. And if more than half of them are like near completely empty, you got a huge issue on your hands. I would say. So no wonder why people are protesting this. It's no surprise. Now, am I here saying that the U.S. needs to get in, regime change and all that? No, actually, I don't believe that's completely necessary. In fact, I think majority of the people living here are tired of living under this tyrannical dictatorship that Iran has turned into. Uh, so a lot of people are pretty unhappy about what's been going on with this. Now, the Iranian situation, if you don't know, it began in 1979 after the Iranian Revolution, where basically we saw Ayatollah Khomeini take over and begin with the whole Islamic Republic situation, and things have become very, very unpopular in the recent years here. Now, I'm not going to get into the history of Iran, as I'm not an expert in all this, but what you need to know is that we are in a situation where people aren't exactly happy. I mean, yeah. We are seeing a lot of protests happening right now. And I think to conclude on this issue, with Iran, for example, uh, we may see regime collapse. We may not see regime collapse. It's a very precarious situation. I do pray for my friends who have family living in Iran, and obviously people who currently live there. It is not a good situation. Um, my deepest condolences to those who lost their lives due to this horrible regime. Uh, yeah, I don't really have much else to say about that. Moving on, we have another topic that's in the news. So we have the Minneapolis shooting that happened a couple of days ago. No, not that. Where is it? Yeah. So Minneapolis ICE shooting live updates. Now, me personally, I am of someone. I don't believe ICE is a fascist Gestapo or whatever. I don't believe in that. All right. Does ICE have problems? Yes. Every governmental agency has problems. I'm not saying ICE is God. I'm not saying that ICE is completely, justified in everything they do. What I will say is that they are facing a lot of scrutiny over this incident. And what's sad about it is that we are seeing a lot of these ICE officers getting attacked for this. And look, I watched the video, all right? I saw what happened to that lady who was unfortunately killed in this incident. I'm not celebrating that she's dead, all right? I don't think anyone should celebrate that she lost her life. It's a horrible thing, I think. All right. But at the same time, I will say she made a really bad choice to stand in the way of those officers, I would say. I mean, from what we saw from the clips, and I'm not going to play them on here because I don't want to get demonetized or anything, or taken off the internet. She was asked to leave her vehicle multiple times, and she didn't comply. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing I want to be clear about. ICE generally does not have jurisdiction over regular citizens like you and I, for example, who are living in this country, legally, of course. ICE generally doesn't have, jurisdiction over any of us. With that being said, what was happening in Minneapolis was, targeting people who came into this country illegally. All right, they can't. They are in our country. They are not supposed to be here, and all that. As you may see. And what this lady did was she was trying to protest and trying to, from what I could tell at least, and correct me if I'm wrong. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on this. But she was trying to impede the investigation that was being conducted by ICE. And so, at that point, it no longer becomes, oh, ICE doesn't have jurisdiction over you, but rather that ICE is able to simply say, hey, you're impeding with our investigation. We have the legal right to detain you. So, let me just be clear about this. All right? I've driven on the road for many years. When you get pulled over, all right, when you get pulled over on the highway, what happens is that a police officer will come up to your window, ask you a few questions, all that stuff. But if the police officer asks for you to step out of the car, you must do it. It doesn't matter if, you said something or they said something, whatever. It's generally a lawful order if they observed you doing something you weren't supposed to be. And this woman was observed doing something she wasn't supposed to be. Again, ICE has limited custody over, or not custody, limited jurisdiction over people like private citizens, for example. But that gets changed when there's sort of a threat to either obstruction or violence. And this woman was not complicit. She did not comply with the officer's orders. She was seemingly belligerent from what I could tell from the video. Again, I'm not going to show the video because it might go against YouTube's terms of service. But from what I could tell, she was not listening to what the officers were saying. And again, ICE does not have jurisdiction over regular citizens unless you are doing something to impede their investigation, which one could argue that's what she was doing. So, again, my condolences go out to her family. I think what happened to her was pretty unfortunate. She did not deserve to die. I don't think. But at the same time, she made an extremely poor choice by disobeying officers' orders. And she put those officers in a very dangerous situation. I mean, a car is legally a deadly weapon if misused. And she was clearly not listening to what the officers were saying. And look, I saw the clip. She tried to drive away. I completely get that argument. But again, she was asked to step out of the vehicle. All right? She was asked to step out of the vehicle, and she didn't do it. Now, does that make ICE fascist Nazis? No, it does not. At least I would argue that they requested for her to step out of the car for their safety and her safety, and she didn't listen to them. Again, I don't think. Again, if you're left, you're right, you're center, you're whatever political leaning, whatever opinion leaning you have, I really don't think that should matter in a case like this. I really don't think that with all this stuff that's been going on, I don't think it should matter. All right? She was killed by one of these ICE officers, which is terrible. But at the same time, she also made a very, very bad choice to be confrontational with ICE. All right? And I don't think anyone should be celebratory of her dying. No one I've spoke to is celebratory of her dying, from what I can tell. But she also shouldn't have done what she did, either. There's seemingly fault on both sides. And to top it all off, all right, to top all this off, within the past year, 2025, 2024, I might get in trouble for talking about this, but I feel like it must be said. 2024, we saw Donald Trump nearly getting assassinated twice. All right, twice. And what makes it, disturbing is that, that became the sort of status quo for political violence in this country. Multiple attempts on the president's life. The year after, 2025 was no different. We saw, people getting shot in Washington, D.C. We saw Charlie Kirk getting assassinated, which is an entirely separate episode. May he rest in peace as I'm talking about this. Outside of Charlie Kirk, we even saw J.D. Vance's home getting broken into a few days ago. Again, no one at least from my peers, none of us are happy that this woman lost her life. None of us are. I don't think that, barring, terrorists, pedophiles, and, those types of people, I don't think anyone should be happy that an innocent woman lost her life. Well, not innocent, but I don't think anyone should be happy that, a human being lost their lives at the hands of another. It should not be something we should be celebrating. But whether or not, the officer was legally justified, we're just going to have to wait. Now, before this episode ends, I just want to run a few disclaimers. One, this episode is, again, it's a very special episode because, it's episode 1. Of course, it's going to be a special episode. Future episodes will not be live like this one. This was just a sort of a test. I might do live episodes every once in a while, but most of them are going to be pre-recorded videos. But anyway, with that being said, I have a few disclaimers to make. One, as I mentioned earlier, I have my own personal biases. All right, we all do. I'm not going to attempt to hide that on this channel. Secondly, what's been going on, I am fully aware that these cases frequently update. There are, it's very difficult to keep up every single time whenever there are stuff like, every single time Trump is in office, there's always a lot of crazy things that happen. All right, I don't make the rules. All right, I am not some sort of secret government agent that dictates, what happens. I'm not God. One thing I will say is that if you follow the Pizza Index on Twitter right now, it might give you a good heads up on big events that might be happening. Now, this is sort of a bit of a fascinating topic in the sense, now bear with me, we have, so the pizza index is sort of an unofficial meter of what's going on with the Pentagon. So, if you don't know, here's the Pentagon Pizza Index. Uh, so the concept of the Pizza Index is we are seeing stuff about how with Pizza Index, people are watching over how many pizza orders are happening within the Washington D.C. area. Reason being, with all this going on, as you may know, the Pentagon is where a lot of the U.S. military is based out of. We have a lot of people working there, and a very popular choice of food is obviously pizza. We live in the United States; it's very popular here. The more pizza that gets ordered here, the concept being is that the more pizza being ordered in those areas, the more likely we're going to be seeing a big event. A lot of important meetings, a lot of people ordering pizza for a very stressful event. You can even see, possible threat monitors around here. Now, I personally think this website is very cool. There's even a Twitter page version of this. But, as you can see, the pizza meter is... Now, again, it's not an official metric. You can't say that just because there's a lot of pizza being ordered here that something insane is definitely going on. But it makes a very, very good indicator of geopolitical events, particularly concerning the U.S. And some of the stuff that's been going on, I mean, we see U.S. Russia, we see Russia Ukraine, U.S. Iran, U.S. China, U.S. Venezuela. Some of this stuff that's been going on, we see a huge thing going on. And again, mentioned earlier, we were mentioning about Ayatollah Khamenei possibly being overthrown by all the protests that are happening in Iran right now. It's one of the top topics. Now, I am not here to... I do not endorse gambling here, all right? I do not endorse, betting on certain events happening. I'm not... this is a spoiler alert. I am not going to be, donating whatever here. No, that's just not going to happen. But what I will say is that, given what we were reading earlier, there's definitely a possibility of this kind of a thing happening where the Islamic Republic is overthrown. Now, I'm not someone who's blindly pro-Israel, all right? I'm not someone who's blindly pro-Ukraine, pro all that stuff. I want to get the facts of the matter straight, all right? But the Islamic Republic falling would be a great thing, both for the people of Iran, for the people of Israel, for the United States. This regime has been pretty bad, all right? Shutting down the internet when protests get too big. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this guy is an 86-year-old lunatic. All right, he's a lunatic because he's never going to outpace the U.S. in terms of military power. I mean, we just got the bill that increased the military budget from, I believe, $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. I mean, God, the defense budget is so high. But again, a lot of people say that the defense budget it being raised is sort of, controversial. And I might see why people would say something like that. But again, there is a reason why every single country is afraid of us. I don't want people, or rather our enemies, to see us as weaklings, all right? That military budget being high, it's for a reason, all right? If it wasn't so high, countries with truly evil ideas would overwhelmingly take over us. Now, this episode is ending in a few minutes, so I just want to recap a few things. So, what we talked about today, we talked about Venezuela, all right? We talked about Iran. We talked about my own personal life. We talked about the Pentagon Pizza Index. the Minneapolis shooting that happened yesterday. So there was a lot to cover in this episode, but I'm glad I was able to talk about it in this shortened episode. Usually these episodes are supposed to go on for an hour long. In this case, I ran into a few technical difficulties before starting the live stream. But with that being said, I think that we can wrap it up pretty shortly. So, as always, thanks for watching this live stream with us. I'm going to be cutting it a little bit short. My throat's not feeling super great, but other than that, I'm out. So thank you for watching.